Tonight, how a change in capital gains taxes could impact family farms in our province. High honors for two Saskatchewan men who drowned trying to save two children who fell through the ice last year. And Shea Patterson gets ready to step in as Riders' starting quarterback.
This is CBC Saskatchewan News.
It is Wednesday, July 3rd, and the CBC Saskatchewan News starts right now. I'm Ethan Williams in for Sam McCagg. Thanks for joining us tonight. Saskatchewan has continued to withhold portions of the carbon tax from the federal government, and now the provincial auditor is calling that decision into question. Alexander Kwan reports.
A decision by the provincial government to hold back part of the federal carbon tax money has resulted in a warning from Saskatchewan's auditor. Earlier this year, the province vowed to not collect the carbon tax on natural gas. It said Ottawa's decision to exempt home heating oil was unfair to provinces, including Saskatchewan. According to Sask Energy, about 85% of its residential customers in the province use natural gas to heat their homes. The Saskatchewan government's decision has drawn criticism from Ottawa and political observers who say the province is breaking federal law. Now it's drawn the ire of the province's auditor. Tara Clement published her annual audit of the province's books last week. In it, she warned the government's decision to withhold the carbon tax on natural gas could have severe financial consequences in the future, even suggesting that the province's future books could have material misstatements or significant errors if the province's policy continues. Dustin Duncan, the man now responsible for remitting the carbon tax to the federal government, has previously said he's willing to go to carbon jail for the policy. On Wednesday, he brushed off the auditor's concerns.
There's a process that goes on now between the province and CRA in terms of reconciling those numbers, and so at this point, we're comfortable with our belief and understanding that we've paid what we owe, and we'll continue to do so.
It's not clear how much the province has failed to remit back to the federal government this year. But in the 2022-2023 fiscal year, Sask Energy gave $172 million to the feds. And the carbon tax has only increased since then. Alexander Kwan, CBC News, Regina.
And staying on the energy front now, the province was touting a new battery system that's just come online today, one that will help provide a backup energy supply. This is the Battery Energy Storage System. It's located in the east end of Regina. It's a system that relies on the lithium batteries located in these converted sea cans. The batteries have the capacity to provide 20 megawatts to the province's power grid. That's enough to provide up to 20,000 homes for 1 hour.
So you have a significant amount of industrial load in North Regina, and certainly Regina is a significant load for SaskPower. And so this facility will serve primarily Regina, but in theory the power is available province-wide.
The batteries are meant to help balance the system when there are peak loads relying on the power grid. It's also incorporating renewable energy into the system. The facility cost $34 million, $13 million of which was put in by the federal government. Agriculture groups are raising concerns that changes to capital gains taxes could cause a significant decline in family farms. Starting last week, the taxable percentage for over $250,000 increased, impacting sales of farmland. The added expense is forcing some farmers to quickly adapt their retirement plans. And as Alexander Silberman tells us, some say the change could deter younger farmers from taking over.
Jake Legui knows the fields of his Saskatchewan grain farm well, the same land his family has harvested for 3 generations. Legui hopes to eventually transfer the land to his 3 sons, but with rising costs to enter the farming business, including taxes, he's concerned that might be challenging.
They're going to be paying more when it comes time to make the next transition to Generation 4. So, it's a long-term concern, but it's something we're definitely already thinking about.
Farmers like Legui are speaking out over changes to the capital gains tax. Until last week, only 50% of profits or capital gains were taxable. Now 66% of profits will be taxed. The value of Canadian farmland has been soaring in recent years, and that's making it lucrative for non-farmer investors to buy up properties. National agriculture groups say that's creating steep startup costs for young people looking to begin farming.
This will only accelerate that because it's going to increase the cost for that next generation that are looking to take over. And if they don't have the means or the funds to be able to take over, large corporate farms are gonna move in and buy up all that land.
Grain Growers of Canada calculates a typical farm in Ontario purchased in the 1990s would sell for about $15 million today. That would mean more than $13 million in profits. Under the old system, the farmer would pay $3.8 million, but with the changes, that amount goes up to $4.9 million. This farm tax expert says every farmer's situation is different, but says some are having to revisit retirement plans.
And it's caused some stressful conversations amongst some particular clients and people in the industry.
But the federal finance minister says there are allowances to make it easier. When a farm changes hands, the first $1.25 million of capital gains is tax exempt. The increase only applies to anything over and above that.
You are actually going to be better off under the new system than you were previously if you are a founding farmer or entrepreneur.
Jake Legui is far from retirement at 39 years old, but already thinking about the transition.
It's only right that we continue that tradition and try and continue building this farm for the next generation.
Legui hopes to see that next generation taxed at the original rate, a move he says would slow a decline in family farms. Alexander Silberman, CBC News, near Fillmore, Saskatchewan.
Well, people in Saskatoon are used to seeing coyotes hiding in the bushes on trails by the river, but now some say the animals are getting a lot more aggressive. Linda Lund has been walking the Meewasin trails in the Silverwood area for almost 30 years. She says she was terrified on a recent walk with her small dogs because a snarling coyote came toward them. She says she screamed and another person came to her rescue.
Came flying at me. I could not keep him like full, like teeth bared, growling. I could not keep him any more than 10 feet away.
I think most major cities in the country have a coexistence with wildlife policy, and we do too, and for the most part our residents are fine with that. Where it needs to be elevated, though, I think we need to see that there's an opportunity to elevate it and actually move in and maybe remove them if that's possible.
Donauer has asked city administration to investigate and offer options to deal with the coyotes. If the motion to investigate goes through, council would debate and vote on the options. The public would also be able to weigh in. WestJet passengers continue to face some travel frustrations following a weekend strike that later ended. That continues to impact travelers at both Regina and Saskatoon's airports. The two-day strike resulted in the grounding of more than 1,000 flights, affecting 100,000 passengers. The company says it is peak travel season, so there's limited availability for rebooking on WestJet and other carriers. The airline says if a flight was delayed or canceled, it will make every effort to get customers to their destination, but some say that getting in touch with WestJet customer service has been nearly impossible. Well, last winter, 3 people, including a little girl, died after falling through the ice on Humboldt Lake. Now, the 2 men who drowned in the rescue are being posthumously awarded one of North America's highest civilian honors for heroism. Pertush Dayal sat down with their family.
It's not just Chris that I'm grieving, it's my entire life, my normal, the future we had planned. Absolutely everything I miss about him.
Kristen Novakoski's husband Chris, her nephew Joe, and her niece drowned last November at Humboldt Lake. 7-year-old Ava and her younger sister were playing near the lake that winter afternoon when they fell to thin ice. Both Chris and Joe jumped into the icy water to try to save the 2 girls, but both of them drowned. Ava was pronounced dead at the scene. Her sister survived. Now, Chris and Joe are among 18 North Americans receiving the Carnegie Medal, a prestigious hero award.
This was his chain and the medallions, and he had them on at the time of the accident, and they stayed on him.
Both Kristen and Joe's sister Kate wear lockets with the fingerprints of the deceased men. They say the award recognizes the men's selfless nature.
It is a huge honor for our family, and it just makes us that much more proud of them for what they did. It does not bring them back in any way, and it doesn't lessen the grief.
Kristen says the award will keep her memories alive. She's also learning to play a drum set Chris gave her one Christmas.
I want to pursue or keep pursuing learning how to drum in his honor. And I've gone on a few trips since the accident to some of his favorite, to concerts of some of his favorite bands, and that has helped, again, to just keep his spirit alive.
For Kate, this memory of Joe playing piano is her fondest. She even got a tattoo of it on her leg.
It's hard to pick just one thing to think that I miss about Joe, but we were always just so close, and just losing someone that you know that you can always talk to and lean on and is always there for you, it's very, very hard.
The women want the world to remember the men as heroes with big hearts.
It gives us a sense of closure in that everyone will see how much of a hero they are and how selfless and courageous they are.
I think one thing I want people to take away from this is don't assume that you're guaranteed a long life, because you're not, and we had to learn that the hard way with them leaving us.
Pratish Dayal, CBC News, Saskatoon.
Well, a nice day for a walk in Regina today and much of our province, but things have gotten a bit stormy for some of us. I'll have a look at where we're seeing severe weather in Saskatchewan when we come back. After their first bye week of the season, the Saskatchewan Roughriders will return to the field tomorrow night. It will be their first real test of the season as the 2-1 Toronto Argonauts pay a visit to Mosaic Stadium. It's been a very rosy picture for the Riders so far this season, starting off with 3 straight wins. Granted, they are still against teams still looking to win a game this season. The one setback is a knee injury to quarterback Trevor Harris, who was placed on the 6-game injured reserve list this week. That means backup Shea Patterson will be making his first ever CFL start.
The only time you get, nervous or feel, like the nerves are too much is when you haven't put in the work. But I feel like that I've prepared myself, and the coaches have prepared me, and everybody in the room's prepared to play. I think the nerves just might be excitement.
Executing the things that we feel put us in the best position to win. We're instilling confidence in Shea to get that done. He's proven to show that he's able to do that throughout the week. And you don't want to create a specific play to allow him to do what he does, if things hit the fan, he's got the ability to make something happen.
With a win over the Argos, the Riders will stay undefeated and atop the West Division. Kickoff is tomorrow night at 7 o'clock at Mosaic Stadium. Well, farmers are rejoicing with the rain that's finally quenching their dry crops, but the moisture has been challenging for others, with campgrounds near Saskatoon hit with localized flooding this past week. And while this past June was wetter than Junes of previous years, it's really just a return to more normal precipitation.
I think we have a little bit of recency bias in that we think that Junes are supposed to be hot and dry, but in this case, we got more precipitation this June compared to the last 3 years, so certainly well above average. And with the amount that fell, it put us into, I think, the 18th wettest June in the period of record that we have in Saskatoon.
Lang says it's difficult to say why there's been more rain, but she believes it could be because the El Nino climate pattern that dominated our weather this winter is breaking down.
The weather update is brought to you by Capital Ford Lincoln, proud partner of the Saskatchewan Roughriders.
And a live look at Regina right now, where we are continuing to see showers move through, not just our area, but lots of south and central Saskatchewan. And you can see that storm now just off outside of the city. If we take a look at satellite and radar right now, we can actually see where the storms are just east of the city. A few of those are kind of making their way back westward toward the city. We have a few different frontal boundaries and outflow boundaries that are now moving through the province, which means that the storms are kind of moving in all directions. And that could be moving not only into the Regina area, but as you can see, much of South and Central seeing some thunderstorm watches and warnings as those cells move through. Here's a look at where those are right now. There's too many to take them kind of individually here, but basically if you're living through the northern grain belt of the province, that is where we're seeing warnings pop up. And you can see much of the northern grain belt and eastern sections of the province are looking at severe thunderstorm watches right now, and that'll likely continue through the evening hours tonight. Where the rain is falling is where the temperatures are cooling down. So you can see through South and Central for the moment around places like Saskatoon and Wynyard. We're into the mid-20s right now, but places like Swift Current and Regina, where we're closer to those showers, the temperatures are back down into the teens. So all this continuing through the evening, we'll likely get some clearing past midnight for many of us. That's when the severe weather threat drops off. But then we're going to just do this whole thing again tomorrow as that instability in the atmosphere is still there and some of those storms could turn severe once more. And then we'll do the same thing on Friday, especially for eastern sections of the province. Saturday brings the risk of some more storms, but I think we're looking for more showers than thunderstorms, and that'll be isolated mostly to southern Saskatchewan. It's really going to depend where these storms pop up, but these are the rainfall totals that we could see over these next few days here. 2 or 3 days or so could be in some places 20 to 25 millimeters piling up. In terms of the severe threat tomorrow, that'll mostly be isolated to southeastern Saskatchewan. Think Highway 16 and south, kind of the Yorkton area there, including Moosomin and Carlisle. Some large hail, gusty winds, and yes, maybe even some funnel clouds possible. But the wind in general going to stay fairly light until we get into later Friday when things start picking up a little bit. So for Regina, yes, we are part of this kind of rinse and repeat scenario over these next 3 days or so here. And then we get into Sunday and next week. And that's when we start to see a major shift in our weather pattern. Upper 20s, maybe even 30 degrees a little longer down the week there. Saskatoon, a nearly identical forecast. You'll notice that overnight lows staying pretty consistently in the mid-teens before we start to see some warmer weather as well. And humidex values could even be warming up into the mid-30s by the time we hit the middle of next week for not just Saskatoon, but much of the province. Stay with us. We'll have more news after the break. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau faced reporters today for the first time since the Liberals lost a by-election last week. Questions about his leadership dominated the event. As Ashley Burke reports, divisions in the caucus about Trudeau's future persist.
What's your name? The Prime Minister back in his own riding, showing his constituents and cameras he's not going anywhere, despite calls to step down.
Last week's by-election loss, not to sugarcoat it, was challenging. It was something we need to take seriously.
That stunning by-election loss cost the Liberals a longtime seat in Toronto St. Paul's, caused division in caucus, and led Liberal MP Wayne Long to call for Trudeau to go. Privately, another Liberal MP told CBC News there are a number of MPs now considering if they'll run again if Trudeau stays on.
Are you willing to stay on and lose members of your caucus?
I think the conversations that I'm having with MPs directly right across the country, the conversations that we're all having as Liberals are going to continue.
But that source said every member of caucus deserves a call, not just a select few, as ministers continue to defend Trudeau publicly.
I think he is the right leader for us. He's won 3 elections. We formed government 3 times.
Others were asked if they'd run for leader if Trudeau steps down.
I have been very clear over the last few days that Justin Trudeau is the leader of the Liberal Party of Canada. I support it, obviously.
Winnipeg North MP Kevin Lamoureux says he's not pressing panic and will only run again in the next election if Trudeau does.
I've made a commitment to Justin Trudeau to be a candidate in the next election. I'm committed to running as long as he is the leader.
9 Liberal MPs have signed a letter calling for an immediate caucus meeting to talk about the by-election loss. But today, Trudeau dodged questions about if he'll do that. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
Voters in the United Kingdom are going to the polls tomorrow, and all indicators are pointing to a major change in government. CBC's Briar Stewart takes a look at the last day of campaigning.
It was Lewis flat 8, undecided.
Across the UK, the final push for votes.
Okay, right.
In the town of Watford, volunteers canvass for the local Labour candidate.
Tories have not been good for the United Kingdom, and that's the essence of it.
And they say that's what they hear from the voters they managed to speak with on the doorstep.
This constituency is a real priority for the Labour Party because they believe there's enough support to win a seat here, which they haven't done since Tony Blair was Prime Minister.
Watford is a commuter town just outside of London. It's considered a bellwether riding. Voters here usually elect whichever party ends up forming the government.
Everybody I'm talking to, it seems like they want a change.
I think I would vote for the Labour Party. I think they are more geared towards looking after working class people.
Labour leader Keir Starmer is on the brink of becoming Britain's next Prime Minister.
We are fighting for every vote.
Polls point to Labour winning a significant majority. Even some Conservatives believe their scandal-plagued party will lose big, which is why in a last-ditch effort, Boris Johnson popped up on the campaign trail, throwing his support behind Rishi Sunak, the man who helped push him out of the Prime Minister's office.
You like that, Brody?
Sunak spent his final hours on the campaign trail trying to appeal to families, but his time in power is almost certainly fleeting. The big question, observers say, is what happens next.
We in this country face really serious economic problems. If Labour don't manage to do something about that, the danger is that the next election will be an even more angry election with more and more people voting against the mainstream and looking for alternatives.
Because while Labour is poised to take over the government, it will also inherit all of the country's problems too. Briar Stewart, CBC News, London.
Hurricane Burl is bearing down Jamaica as it continues its charge across the Caribbean. The Category 4 storm has sustained winds topping 200 kilometers an hour. Residents have been preparing by boarding up buildings and sandbagging properties. Jamaica has closed all 3 of its international airports and imposed a curfew. Dozens of shelters have been opened. The storm is being blamed for at least 6 deaths and extensive damage in the southeastern Caribbean. Burl is expected to cross the Cayman Islands later tonight. Mexico has posted a hurricane warning for the east coast of the Yucatan Peninsula, including Cancun. Well, for those of us in Regina, we're looking at a mostly clear night tonight after the thunderstorms come to an end. At least temperature's not going to drop too much, and it'll be a nice start to our morning tomorrow. Looking at a mix of sun and cloud, 17 degrees, and the winds staying not too bad actually as we head into the afternoon. However, of course, there is the possibility that we could run into some showers and thunderstorms. In Regina, a couple of those could be severe tomorrow, so we'll keep our eye out on that. For Saskatoon, pretty similar picture here. I think we're looking at mostly clear skies, a temperature of around 16, a nice night ahead. A little more sunshine for you as we head into tomorrow. Similar temperature around 17 or so. Those winds staying fairly light for you too. And yes, a little bit of increasing cloudiness as we get into the afternoon with some showers and thunderstorms, albeit probably less severe than in the south. And that is it for us tonight. For news anytime, you can head to cbc.ca/sask. You can, of course, always subscribe to the CBC Saskatchewan YouTube channel or download the CBC News app. We're back tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. In the meantime, thanks so much for watching. Have a great night.